Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Born for Purpose podcast. I'm so excited to be back. I didn't take a super long break this time. Are you guys proud of me? It's okay if you're not. But anyway, super excited for today's episode. It was such a good conversation, you guys. Like, Hunter has so much wisdom. You guys are going to be like, so shocked at the wisdom that he has. But really enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you guys do as well. And yeah, let's jump right into the episode.
Well, what is up, you guys? Super excited to have Hunter Harrison on the podcast today. I think this is going to be a great episode. And yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Hunter, and who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff.
Sweet. Okay. So, hey guys, what's up? I'm honored to be on this podcast. I'm so hyped. I'm Hunter, like she said. I am currently a full-time pastor in Tampa Bay, in Florida. I think there's only one Tampa Bay, so I think that kind of settled it. There might be another one. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I'm a full-time pastor in Tampa Bay. I am the young adults, children's ministry, and social media pastor here at Crosswind Church. I also run a podcast called Generation Now. You can check that out. Shameless plug. Just shamed my podcast in your podcast. That's crazy.
Dude,
my bad.
That's totally okay.
My bad.
I actually was on your podcast not that long ago.
You were.
And so now you're returning the favor.
Yep.
And
yeah, this is going to be fun.
I love it, you know?
Yeah, this is great. We had an awesome time. That was a really cool episode. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it because it's super, super good. But yeah, I think, that's about me. I'm 20 years old. People get surprised when I tell them that I'm 20. The beard kind of throws them off. And also the fact that I'm a pastor kind of throws them off too. It's like, oh, that's a little strange. But yeah. So that's a little bit about who I am, what I'm doing. I think that pretty much covers it.
Nice. And yeah, I do have to say, if I didn't know that you were 20, I don't think I would guess that you were 20.
Yeah, I get that. When I shave that beard, you're like, are you 18? Are you 17 years old? The beard it's
deceiving.
It is. Yeah.
Well, awesome. And since you mentioned that obviously you're a pastor and you're in ministry, I did want to ask, like, how did you come to know Christ and how did you start getting involved in ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised in a Christian house. It wasn't everything we talked about, but it was, part of who we were. And so I was raised in a little tiny Baptist church in the woods of Florida, about as much woods as you can get down here. There was no AC, 3 big fans. It was backwoods. And
wow.
So I had, I knew who Jesus was, but I didn't really have a relationship with him until I was about 13. I went to a kids camp, and the Holy Spirit hit me like I've never experienced before. I experienced God in a very tangible way, and it kind of just changed my perspective on who I was, what I was going to do. And in that moment, when I really saw Jesus for the first time, really experienced him for the first time, was the first time that he called me into ministry. And so from there, kind of just did everything I could to be involved with the church. I would clean, I would volunteer, I would be an intern. Any way I could do anything in ministry, I would do it, because I wanted to do as much as I could to kind of grow off of the leaders that I had around me, and to just eat up as much information as I could get with the time that I had. And so I did anything and everything. And then I got my first ministry job, quote unquote job, when I was 16. My job was to go around and tell people about the organization that I worked for, kind of represent them and what they did. But in the meantime, I was doing a lot of ministry in high school, in middle school. I did a lot of ministry while I was in school. We actually saw crazy stuff when I was in school. We had revival events in my high school. We saw teachers saved in the classroom. I mean, it was
Wow.
crazy stuff. Yeah, wild stuff. So I'd say that definitely when my life kind of took a turn towards ministry was when, like I said, when I had that experience with Jesus. And I think that it was never something that I really wanted to do,
Mhm.
because even though now I talk a lot, I have a little bit now, but more back then. I had a very bad social anxieties that came to public speaking. But when Jesus kind of wrecked my life, um, I would only have hard times with public speaking when it wasn't about Jesus. But when it was about Jesus, it literally went away. And so it was just
That's
kind of
awesome.
obvious what I needed to do, and God kind of opened the door. And then this past year, when I was 19, I became the pastor here at the church. So and there was opportunities along the way. There was a lot building up to that. But it was just obedience to what he wanted me to do. I can't really say, because a lot of times people will say, like, you know, oh, it takes a lot of hard work, and that is true. It is difficult to kind of get where you want to go and get where you're supposed to go. But at the end of the day, it's not just me doing hard work; it's just me being obedient. Hard work is
Right.
promised. God and Jesus promised us that it's gonna be hard to do what we need to do. But it
Absolutely.
wasn't my hard work that got me here. It was Jesus. So, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
that was kind of
I love
my
it.
calling. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. I know I've gotten to know you pretty well and we've talked about this in the past, but um have you ever struggled with your mental health, and can you also just elaborate on what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people, when they're talking about mental health, you'll hear the miracle stories, right? I struggle with mental health, and then I met Jesus, and boom, my life was
Mm,
changed. But my story
yeah,
is a little different. So I didn't struggle with mental health all the way up until I was about 13 years old. I had struggles here and there, but it wasn't anything, you know, serious. It was just kid mood swings and all this kind of stuff and life. But
sure.
when I really had an experience with Jesus, the experience that changed my life, is when I really started dealing with issues with my mental health. And I don't think it was a coincidence that it happened either. I don't think it's a coincidence that it really started just then. So when I was about 13
Yeah,
is when I really started struggling with um, depression and some thoughts that I shouldn't be having, and all these things, that thinking that I wasn't enough. After I
mm,
was after I had that experience, I understood, even as a young person, that I needed to change the way that I acted. I needed to change the way that I lived my life, and that costed me friends. It costed me things that I was interested in. It costed me hobbies and all these different things. Not that those things were bad, but I understood that if I really wanted to get focused, that I needed to eliminate distractions. And so because of that, it really took a toll on my mental health.
yeah,
I started to get bullied in middle school for the way
mm.
that I loved Jesus. And that's a great thing to be bullied for, to be honest. But and now that I look at it, but back then it wasn't. It was kind of the worst. I remember one time, freshman year of high school, uh, and this is a little bit of a funny story because I've told this a couple times, and people are like, "Why?" So it was, it was like a spirit day at in high school, and it was like a spirit week, and we had to dress up as like book characters. So I dressed up as Jesus, and I promise this ties into my negative mental health, but I dressed up as Jesus, and these three guys pushed me down the stairs and started
Oh
like
my
kicking me.
gosh.
Yeah, it was rough. And after that, um, it was like a kind of an ongoing thing early in my schooling. It was just kind of like I was used to people making fun of me and kind of treating me differently because I was Christian, because I loved him. And so that really took a
Mm,
negative toll. It made me very I started getting really angry with people that didn't deserve to be getting angry at. I would
yeah.
I would I would lash out at my parents, and but it was because I was dealing with this deep centered depression because of these things that I was going through. But at the time, as a young person, you don't see that. You get up
Mm-hmm.
and you're angry. You want to be by yourself. And, I was going to church. That's the thing. I was still going to church. I was still chasing what God wanted me to do. And so I hid these things behind closed doors because I thought that I was like sinning because I was angry. And I thought I was sinning because I wanted to end my life. Like I thought I was sinning because I was having these feelings when in reality, I just needed help, And so I
Yeah.
remember like it was yesterday, the first time that I told somebody that I was dealing with these things. We were on a youth trip, and he told me, he said, Hunter, there's not a ton I can say to you. I don't, and he was like my age, and so he didn't know what to do. But all he said was like, it's okay to feel like this. Like, I know you don't feel like it
Mm-hmm.
is, but it's okay. Like, you're not wrong for having these feelings. When you're trying to help everybody and you're having these feelings, I can understand how it could be a lot, but it's okay to have these feelings. And so I was able to kind of
Absolutely.
process through some of those things younger. But in reality, like if I'm going to be honest with you, it isn't something that just went away. It's something
Mm-hmm.
it's a continual part of my life that's growing. We all still, I think if you really deal with that kind of level of uh, pain in your mental health, like it's not something that just goes away like magic. It's something that it's a continual thing you're working on. So yeah, that's a little
Absolutely.
bit about kind of where I was at with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
I know, like you were saying, I think there's some sort of misconception. I don't know where this came from, that as Christians, like it almost feels not okay
Yep.
to feel those feelings, and to struggle in that way. But I think there's also so many, people in the Bible that you can relate to in that. I mean, look at Job, um, and look at, just other people in the Bible that have struggled. And, like it is totally okay and normal to feel those things, and to go through those things, because, I mean, again, like Jesus didn't promise that it would be easy. He actually says the opposite
Yeah.
in the book of John. He says, you will have trouble in this world. But, the beauty of it is that he says, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. So yeah, I definitely relate to you in that sense. I also felt that way in the past, where it was just like, it feels wrong to kind of feel this way.
Yeah. And
Um,
two, I'll note on that too, because you were talking about people in the Bible, and I was thinking about because a lot of times we look at Job, and because he's someone that um, everything got taken away from him and
mhm,
literally stripped away from him, and so of course he's struggling. But a lot of times we just
mhm,
look at people like Job that are in like the lowest of the low, and then we think in our
right.
lives like, wow, I'm not there, but I'm still struggling with that. But even people like King David in the Bible,
Mhm,
he literally all the time and throughout the book of Psalms, David is complaining, is whining, is crying, is talking to God about his anxieties. I was looking at Psalm 31 9 through 24. It says, he cries out, be merciful to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with
mm,
sorrow, and my soul and my body with grief. And then Psalms 22, he
mm.
says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? David screaming, where are you in my time of trouble? Like this man is struggling. And I thought,
Literally, yeah.
and because I remember talking to people about these problems that I was having and like wanting to talk to God. But as I would read my word, I would read about people like Job that were literally like stripped of everything. And I'm like, wow, why am I complaining? I don't have any room to complain. I'm just going to
Mm,
hide it. But even people like David, like he knew it was okay to be honest. Like he knew it was okay to be raw with the Lord. Like through his mistakes, through
mhm.
his trouble, through all of his mess, he was still honest about his hurt.
Absolutely. And the Lord too, like he grieves with
Yep.
us, you know? Yeah, I really like that. I think it's important to, you know, read the Bible obviously,
Yeah.
and understand that um it is totally okay to feel that way, and it's okay to bring those questions to God. And yeah, I love that. So what really got you through those times in your life where you have struggled with your mental health?
Yeah, I wish I could sit here and tell you that it was from reading my Bible and praying all day, but it was not. I struggled bad with my mental health, even leading up to, 2020, 2022. In college, when I was in college last year, I had a breakdown of my mental health. I mean, it was like
Mm-hmm.
everything just kind of came back to when I felt like 14-year-old me. And I remember just
Yeah,
sitting there crying in my car, and I didn't know why. Everything just kind of flooded back. And like I said, I wish I could tell you that it was just me reading the entire Bible 3 times and praying every day. But in reality, it wasn't. Of course, it took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of time with God. It took a lot of just quiet time, time to shut off everything. But it also took, therapy. I went to therapy, and it wasn't, something that I did for very long, but it's something that helped. And I
mm-hmm.
think that us Christians can sometimes have a negative mindset towards therapy, that we don't need therapy because we have Jesus. And yes,
Right.
Jesus wants to help us, and Jesus wants to cure us of these things. But let's stop let's stop demonizing mental health for a second, and understand that the devil is not in your mind. The devil is not making you have these thoughts. Sometimes we just struggle. Sometimes we just
Yeah.
have bad times in our life, and sometimes bad things
Mm.
happen. I'm a pastor, and I believe in the enemy. I believe that he's there, and I believe he's here to steal, kill, and destroy. But sometimes we just need to understand that we struggle, and that
For
even Jesus
sure.
got upset. The shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept. And the funny thing was that Jesus wept even though he knew what was going to happen in the next day. He knew that his friend was going to get raised from the dead. He was crying over a man that he knew was going to be raised from the dead. And so,
Absolutely.
and it was just a sign that Jesus had feelings. Like Jesus struggled with the same things that we struggle with. And so we have to understand that um, us dealing with these things is not wrong. And so for me, definitely therapy. And then another thing is just unplugging. Unplug. Like it's really not that difficult to just set your phone down, set your computer down, and just unplug from everything. And honestly, I think that I have spoken. I've spent more personal time with Jesus just unplugged than I have watching a sermon on YouTube or something like that, because I'm really just talking to Jesus rather than just hearing about who people think he is, right? Like I want to have a
Right.
personal one-on-one relationship with him, not like I'm reading his autobiography just all the time. While those things are
Mm-hmm.
important and they help us grow, it's also important for us to understand that we need to get alone and spend time in the garden. I mean, Jesus showed us, and I bring up Jesus a lot, and I'm not trying to be all Christiany on everybody listening, but even if you're not a Christian, Jesus is the prime example of a life worth living. Even
Mm.
if you just look at him as a teacher, he's a life worth living, and he set boundaries in place in order to spend time not only with the people around him to teach, but also to spend time with himself and to breathe and to disconnect, quote unquote, disconnect from people and from his work and from what he needed to do. We find Jesus many times
Absolutely.
praying in the garden, talking to God in the garden, meditating, just spending time alone, sleeping alone, just napping. Is there power in a nap? Like just spending
Amen.
time, amen. Just spending time unplugged is really really helped me out. So, and I think too, I think one of the hardest things that helped me is being honest with people, and
Mm.
and just talking to people about how I feel, even if they don't have anything to say. Just like my friend who, the first person I told, he didn't know what to tell me, but it helped me to tell him, and I
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
security in the fact that he knew that I was struggling with those things, and I felt security in the fact that he was there for me, even though he didn't know what to say. So I wasn't
Mm.
expecting words. I wasn't expecting crazy like tweetable encouragement, but I also was expecting just comfort in the fact that he was there. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think talking to people when I was really struggling last year, all I had to do, the biggest thing that I did was I talked to my roommate. And that was something that wasn't easy because you want to, especially if you're in ministry, like you want to kind of keep face. You want to, you want people to grow from you. And so you want to be kind of set apart in the way that some people think you're like untouchable. And I'll tell you right now that that's
Mm.
an unhealthy way to live. If the people don't know you're real, they won't listen to you. If you're in ministry, if you want to be in ministry, you're a young person that's listening to this, don't be untouchable. Don't be unreachable. Don't try to be godlike, because you're not. Everybody in
That's
the
good.
room knows that you're not. And so all it takes is you just being honest. So the moment that I started really being honest is the moment that I really started getting a lot of that off my chest. Literally, like pressure out of my body, and stress just relieving from me, just telling people, hey, I am struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that and relate to that. I also am in ministry, and I think, not only have I felt like that at times where it's like, oh, no one can know that this is going on, because if they see that little bit of realness, like, what are they going to think, but I've also seen it happen to people where, they're in ministry, and it just like it's a breakdown, because it's just like you are just holding it all in because you're feeling so much pressure to be some sort of perfect, when in reality, like, we're all real people and we all go through things. And yeah, I think it's super important to remember that. And I mean, this kind of brings me to my next question, but like, how do you balance being in ministry and, dealing with those mental health struggles? I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but like, what's the balance there?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this first. These things that we're talking about, especially the last thing we just talked about, you know, trying to seem perfect, that's not just a ministry thing. And so if you're listening and you're not a Christian, or you're not in ministry, and you still feel like that, that's normal. We all have this kind of desire to be wanted, and to do this desire to be looked up at. Everybody has it, no matter who you are, what you do. And so I don't want you to think that that's just something that people in ministry deal with. That's everybody, it's everybody. And so just understand that it's okay to struggle. But yeah, so um, yeah, in ministry it's a little difficult than other jobs. If I'm gonna work at Publix, or something like that, and I have to balance between that and my mental health, I have time to do that. In ministry it's a little different because my job doesn't really stop. I don't really have a time that I
Sure.
go home and I'm done with work. It's kind of just like I'm always working. And so here's kind of the healthier way of living that kind of lifestyle. If you're in ministry, or if you're desiring to be in ministry, be honest. I have a lot of pastors that I've in the past, even the past few months, that have literally just straight up told me that the way that I kind of do things is wrong. And here's what they think is wrong, is that I keep it honest 100% of the time. And now you're thinking like, wow, all pastors should, but here's what I mean by that. What I mean by being honest is that if there's something going on, if I have made a mistake that's going to stress me out, or if there's something going on in my mental health, I'm very honest with everybody underneath me that works for me, that works with me, my peers, my boss. Everybody is going to know, hey, this is what's going on, and I just need you to understand. So if I try to push you away a little bit, you understand what's going on. So I tell my
Yeah.
volunteers, if I, like, for instance, for pastors especially, when we do events and it doesn't go the way we want it to go, we can take it to heart, and it can really kind of mess us up mentally and kind of throw us off. But the thing is with me, and I think the smarter thing to do is, instead of just kind of bottling up and just kind of dealing with it, is being honest. Hey, I made a mistake. This is what we did wrong, and this is how we need to move on from that. And
Yeah.
we all kind of have to understand that this is what we need to do right. And so not only does that help with future things that you're doing in your workplace, but that also helps within the attitude and the emotional health of the people around you. If I was to do an event and it went terribly wrong, and it was obvious why, but I didn't acknowledge it, and then
Mhm.
Susie Ann comes up to me and starts telling me all this stuff, and I just get mad, it's going to be like, whoa, what is going on? Like, I don't know if I want to work for this person. I don't know if I want to volunteer. I don't know if I want to be around this person, right? So it's all about being honest and being vulnerable with people and just being real. Like, it's not all about being perfect. It's not all about hiding everything. And especially too, when it comes to kind of balancing the two, I think for me, I have cutoffs. So, like I have time where, like, like Jesus, I have to limit how much, I spend time with people. I have to limit how much I'm on my phone. I have to limit how much I am doing the things that, even though I like to do these things, I have to limit how much I do them because I know that this is me pouring out. So here's the really, really important thing. And this is for anybody, not just if you're in ministry, but the Bible kind of lays this out. If you're not a Christian, and you're listening to this, I would encourage you to read some of what the Bible says. And this is not for you to get saved. These are leadership principles that people use that are not Christian. Very, very high up business leaders and the ones that lay out the business models get a lot of these ideas from what the Bible tells us. And they're not even Christian people, not even people that go to church. But I kind of try to lay out my life as the word kind of tells us to. And so, and just within that, is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries within, like I said, people. Jesus would spend time with himself. I need to set boundaries as it comes to how much I pour out. And here's the reason is because if I keep pouring out, I'm going to be empty and there's going to be nothing left for the people that I love. And so the people that I love, the closest people that are to me, are going to get the very least. And the people that are not are going to get the most. And so it's an imbalance. And then all of a sudden you're doing this and you become dry. And then your mental health goes off the rails, right? Because when you get dry, when your cup is dry, it begins to crack. When you put a dry cup in the freezer, it's going to start to crack and eventually it'll shatter because there's literally nothing inside to keep it together. Now, if there's water in that cup, it's going to keep the glass together. It's not going to go anywhere. Here's the problem is that when we're so empty and then we go into the frigid temperatures of trouble and mental health, when something comes at us that is like really terrible, like, someone in your family dies or you deal with like a really bad sickness or something's going on in your life and you get thrown in the freezer, quote unquote, of life, you're going to begin to crack and shatter because you have nothing holding you together. Now, here's what holds you together.
Absolutely.
For me, Jesus holds me together. But that's not it. Jesus isn't just the only thing that holds me together. He's kind of the glue of everything. But here's what holds me together. It's my personal time reading, my personal time by myself, just unplugging. These things are what kind of holds me together. And so even if you're not a Christian, you have to make sure that you're not pouring out more than you can. Because eventually, like I said, when you get up close and personal with those things that are going to try to test your emotional and mental health, you'll shatter. You'll shatter. So yeah. Hope that kind of answered your question. I kind of went off a different area.
No, absolutely. I love the way that you put that with the cup and everything. I've never, thought about it like that. Like, it's so true. We have to have those things kind of keeping us together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we will shatter.
Right.
And so what's kind of the biggest lesson that you've learned, in your ministry, and in your pastoral leadership?
Biggest lesson. I definitely say one of the biggest is to be honest, like we've been talking about, because growing up, I didn't really have that. I had a lot of pastors that were untouchable. I had a lot of leaders that were untouchable, not even in the church. I just had a lot of mentors that felt untouchable, felt like they didn't have any issues. And it made them almost just harder to kind of read. And their words didn't take deep root in my heart because it didn't seem like they were real people, But the moment you become real with people, the moment you become honest with people is the moment that they feel as though they can trust you. And so the biggest thing I would say a couple big things. Number one is being honest. Number two is setting boundaries. And number three is don't run out. Don't run out, don't run out, don't run out, like we've been talking about. Because the moment you run out is the moment you become complacent in your workplace. You become complacent in your relationships. And I've become complacent before. I've lost relationships. I've lost friendships. I've messed up. I've been angry at family. I've done all these things because I ran out and become complacent. But the cool thing about these things as being honest, creating those boundaries, and don't run out, is they all kind of connect. They all connect together because when I create boundaries, I'm not going to run out because I'm always having that time to myself. And also, when I'm
Absolutely.
having that time to myself and I'm creating those boundaries, I'm also going to be able to be honest with people. But the moment that one of those things goes off, the moment that I stop creating those boundaries, I'm going to run out and then I can't be honest. The moment I stop being honest is the moment I'm not really taking time in my boundaries and I'm not really filling myself up. So they're all connected. And so I'd say those three things, creating boundaries, being honest, and don't run out, have been the biggest lessons that I think I could have ever learned within this time of ministry.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, man, I just appreciate, you coming on and sharing and being a part. Is there anything else that you want people to know, or anything that you want to shout out? Yeah, is there anything like that?
You know what? I mean, we shouted out the podcast. Go check out the podcast. Definitely, it's a lot of fun. We talk about a lot of fun stuff here. It's going to get real interesting. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to get real interesting real soon.
Ooh.
We got some big stuff coming. If you're a Florida native and you need a church, come check us out, Crosswind Church. I would love to connect with you. Or if you don't need a church and you just want to connect with me, let's connect. I'd love to help you any way I can, connect with you, and to be able to just link up. So you can probably find my information somehow through this, I think. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I'll have
Sweet.
everything linked
Great.
in the description. But yeah, again, just appreciate you so much, and just really just appreciate your wisdom, and I feel like I'm learning from you on this episode.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I really just appreciate it, and thank you for being on. And yeah, what a great episode.
It's awesome. You're awesome. Thank you again. Thank you so much for you.
Of
Thank you so much
course.
for this podcast. I needed something like this when I was younger. I needed something like this when I was, dealing with those things. And so definitely, if you're listening, follow along with what Lily has been doing, what she's doing. She's got big stuff coming up, I'm sure, and it's going to be exciting. So stay connected.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much again for listening, and just for the continued support on our Instagram page and everything else that we do. It's so appreciated, and you guys are just the best ever. I want to give a huge shout out to Hunter for being on the podcast. I got to be on his a few weeks ago, so we're kind of just returning the favor. And I really, even before I was on his podcast, just wanted him to be on my podcast. So thank you, Hunter, again for being on and just for being honest and vulnerable. I know that's a hard thing to do, and so we really appreciate it. And again, thank you guys for listening. Continue to support our podcast and the page at bornforpurpose.co on Instagram. And we love you guys, and we'll catch you on the flip.